Hi, I'm Emily Taylor of Collage Quilter. Today I'm in my brand new studio and I'm going to talk to you about some of my tips for creating these more difficult art quilts. So behind me you'll see Adoration. This is a collage quilt designed based on the Gustav Klimt painting Mother and Child. You'll see my horse and my grizzly. These are my main art quilts. They're a little bit more difficult, and I've had many of you ask if I would provide a few little tutorial or a few little tips about making them. So I've comprised your questions and let's jump in about what my suggestions are. So first of all, with these quilts, they all begin with one of my patterns, and in each of my patterns is a foundation gray and white, black and white foundation panel, and you can see the gray tones guide fabric selection and fabric placement. If you've read through the instructions, hopefully you understand that with each of these comes kind of a guide for creating your value sets. So with each of these, there are 6 gray tones in the horse, for example, and each of these is going to represent a value set. When I say set, I mean multiple pieces of fabric for each gray tone. So you're not selecting 6 fabrics, you're selecting 6 fabric clumps, sets. With the darkest, you're gonna select, 6 to 8 different fabrics, and then so on. So my best tip is to make sure that you push your values, meaning the contrast between the light and the dark, as far as you can. If you look carefully, that's what really makes these art quilts look as good as they do. The contrast between the dark and the light, and especially in the grizzly, you can see that dark area down there in his belly contrasted with the light head. It really makes for an effective quilt. So think about when you're selecting fabric, you need a wide variety, a wide assortment from light to dark, and you'll position those in there, you'll assign them their value sets. Now I spend a lot of time, a very significant amount of time selecting fabric for my art quilts. I go shopping and I add to my stash, and when I'm shopping, I really don't buy more than 1/8 of a yard. If I can find a fat 1/8, that's sufficient for what I'm doing generally. But I spend a lot of time, and I suggest that you spend a lot of time to put as much fabric into your collage quilts as you can. It's the variety of fabric that really adds so much depth and dimension and makes it look like an impressionist painting. Okay, so I have my little list here that I'm looking at. So number 1, pushing the limits of your value spectrum, making it wide so there's a high contrast between the lights and the darks. Number 2, selecting fabric, spending a good amount of time selecting a wide assortment of fabric. In just a minute, I'll take you up close and we'll take a look at the variety of fabric in these quilts. Now, while we're talking about selecting fabric, I've had many people ask me about selecting flesh tones for the Adoration quilt. This was tricky. There is not a lot of fabric that is flesh toned. So while there's some beautiful fabric out there. One thing that I learned was that I can use the reverse side of fabric, particularly for the reverse side of orange and salmon. So here's just a few examples of some orange fabric. And if I turn them in the reverse, you can see that all of a sudden they really come a lot closer to the flesh tones that I'm looking for. Also, don't hesitate to put in a little bit of the off-white and tan colors. And for the shadows, I'll take you up close and let you see this, but I've used a lot of a really dusty lavender. That creates a really nice shadow on a flesh tone. So those are my tips for creating the flesh tones for Adoration. One more thing I want to mention about fabric is that I love to mix prints with batiks. Now the prints I'm talking about, they're not they're not a high contrast, loud print. Generally, I try and find, with these art quilts in particular, I try and find printed fabric that is a little, that reads like a solid, and I mix a lot of batiks in there. Batiks are awesome because they come in a very wide spectrum of colors, and they read like a solid with just a little bit of depth and dimension in them. So that's what I recommend for fabric selection. All right, the next thing I get a lot of questions on is the size of the pieces that I should be cutting, the size and shape. The shape generally, I'm very all over the map. Sometimes they're all angular. Sometimes if I start with a rounded shape, I'm going to keep that rounded shape consistent throughout. More important is the size of the shape, or the size of the pieces of fabric that I use. So for example, in this bear, where you can see this large section of very dark fabric, the pieces are going to get a lot larger. So I don't go any larger than the palm of my hand. That's my rule of thumb. And I don't go any smaller than my fingernail, my thumbnail. And so the smaller pieces will be up here where you can see I'm getting a little bit more detail. Same with the horse. There's the pieces up here near his eye and his hair is they're a little smaller than these larger pieces down here where I have a larger area of the quilt to cover. So if it's a large area of the quilt that I need to cover and it's all the same value, I go a little bit larger. Now, the amount of fabric. You can never have too much fabric in a collage quilt. When I'm working on a quilt, I pull together as much fabric as I can. Again, I think that adds a lot of interest to the final product. Finally, the background. My strongest recommendation is to leave the background for the last. The most important thing that we're working on is the foreground, the main image. So that main image should dictate what happens in the background. If you start with the background first, then your background will dictate what happens in the main subject. And we don't want that. So I always leave the background of my collage till the very end. In fact, with the horse collage, I had him all finished. I was really happy with him. And I started pinning pieces up to the background, and I changed it 3 times because I wasn't happy with it. So this horse, I'm very happy with the way it turned out, but if I had begun the way I thought I wanted it to look with the background, I would have been up a creek, and I would have been really sad about that. So my recommendation is to leave the background for the last. Now, how to finish the background, you can see in the grizzly and in the horse, I do the collage edge to edge. With the adoration, I went ahead and cut the main subject out, and then I applied her to a pieced background. Your other option is to leave the background white, and that is an option that I make available particularly because you're using a really nice piece of high quality cotton to apply your fabric to. So you can leave it white, you can apply it to another background fabric, or you can use the collage edge to edge technique. For these higher quality art quilts, I prefer the edge to edge background quilting, or background. So that's a little hint about that. Okay, let's get zoom in a little bit. I hope I can do this and not fall apart. But I want to show you some up close detail on these quilts, and then we will be finished. If you have any questions ever about making one of my collage quilt patterns, please feel free to email me, Emily@collagequilter.com. You can also find me in my Facebook groups. Collage Quilter is one of the Facebook groups, but the Collage Quilt Along with Emily Facebook group is where I really interact and try and give tutorials and help. So you can find me there. You can also find my patterns for sale at collagequilter.com. All right, let's take a little close-up tour of these collage quilts. Okay, so first of all, let's start with the grizzly. I want to give you a real close-up view of the variety of fabric that I've used in just one section of the quilt. So this is all the same value, but I've used probably, I'd say 8 different fabrics there. I really like the way he turned out because of that. Same thing with the horse. The horse has a great variety of fabric. And what I love about this horse is if I zoom in, you have no idea what you're looking at until you back up. It's just a really interesting, fun quilt. This one is my Sublime quilt. This is a good beginning intermediate project. Very simple, very fun. And now here is Adoration. What I want to show you here is, again, the variety. Let's see if we can get a good picture of the variety of fabrics that I've used. And then you can see I've used down here for the shadow some dusty lavender, some kind of rust tones, even the reverse of some browns. So that's how I get the shadow down here. Okay, that was fun. I hope that's been helpful for you as you work to create your own collage quilts. Again, you can find me at collagequilter.com or in the Collage Quilter Facebook group or Collage Quilt Along with Emily. All right, till next time, I'll see you later. Bye-bye.